So we have some of the most interesting, unique, and amazing meditations, I think, in the world. I mean, we have past life regression meditations, guided hypnosis meditations, Akashic record meditations, as well as healing meditations. Our meditations are pretty cool. And they're not just about stillness of mind and peace and sit there, I mean, we have those too. Don't get me wrong, but these are about meditations that are going to shift and change, and you're going to walk out of there feeling lighter, freer, healed, and even getting guidance and insight. So come down, experience one of our meditations. They're pretty badass. Hi, this is Cristina Dam, and this is Liberate the podcast, where we educate, motivate, inspire, and liberate your consciousness. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Liberate the podcast. This is Elijah.
Hi.
He is going to talk to us today about his journey in self-discovery and healing through crystals and tarot, but also he is the founder of an amazing metaphysical line called the Expressive Earth. And so we have some of his products here that are spirit water. He also makes different candles and other things, and his line's continuously growing. He's been affiliated with the Liberate family for a few years now through, doing his own thing now, but still one of our family loves. And so I'm excited to have you. And, a lot of people always are, one of the big things when people are getting onto a spiritual journey, or when they're, discovering metaphysical things or interest in crystals, it's really like this gateway of this direction into yourself, right? Yeah. And I want to hear a little bit about that for you, and if you want to share a little bit more on who you are too, but
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, hi again, my name's Elijah. It's interesting because tarot and crystals didn't really, it wasn't something that kind of like one day I discovered. It's been something like a lifelong thing. Like, I remember one of the first pieces of crystal that I ever got was from my mom, and that was probably about 5 or something like that. And I always had a fascination with crystals from a geological standpoint. Like, younger me was like a super nerd, so I was very much so into like geology and like earth sciences and stuff like that. And that grew and that developed, and eventually I started collecting a lot more of them, and specifically with tarot, I think I picked up my first deck of tarot cards probably at like 13. I think.
Wow. And how did you even get introduced to it and things? Because we both grew up in the Midwest, and esoteric things aren't as common as practice. Yeah. It's pretty common that people play the Ouija board or the different things along those lines.
Not advised, but
go on little witch hunts or something. But the other things and that exposure to tarot or oracle decks and that kind of stuff, that's you didn't see metaphysical stores in that area. Yeah. So, how at 13, or was this something in your family, did you get exposed to it?
It was kind of both. As you know, from the Midwest, you're from Kenosha, correct?
Yeah.
We're literally like 30 minutes away from each other, which is totally crazy. I'm from Mundelein. Woohoo, go Mundelein.
I used to go to this Mundelein saloon and go line dancing.
I'm pretty sure I know exactly which saloon you're talking about. But, being from the Midwest, I think there is a natural connection to the earth and the seasons, more so than maybe here in LA, where, you get 4 seasons, maybe sometimes 4 seasons in a week in the Midwest, So I think being connected to the earth in that way, and just the stillness that environment provides, it was you can kind of feel the spiritual energy there. At least I could growing up, and it was something that was in my family, but it wasn't something that was like talked about per se. Okay. It was just more something that was like, if it came up, it came up, but I was the one that was like, I need to know the ins and outs. Again, I was very scientific as a kid, so I always wanted to know how and why things were the way that they were. So that led me into really, diving into learning on my own. It wasn't necessarily something that was taught to me. It was more like the door was opened of my curiosity, and then I kind of just like dove head first.
Dove in. Do you remember, did you buy your first tarot deck? Did it get gifted to you?
Oh man, I think I got my first tarot deck from, it was either Barnes and Nobles.
Oh, when bookstores existed.
Or Barnes and Nobles or Borders, which that's like a super throwback. But it was either there or this place. It was like it was called like GameWorks, I think, or something like that. And
they had a lot of those.
Yeah, I kind of was into Warhammer a little bit at the time. I don't know if it's kind of like Dungeons & Dragons, but not. But they had a section of tarot cards, and I got a deck there, and then I just started like playing with them, not really knowing, and then I started reading from my friends, and then I read from my mom, and then it just kind of became a thing. Like I would hang out, and people's moms would be like, "Hey, so."
Yeah, because it's different growing up when we grew up and things like that, and there isn't the internet. So it's like you literally like read the book and you like bought another book and you studied.
And if you could find like one of those like really chintzy websites that are like Learn Tarot, like back in the day with the glitter glistening in the background.
I didn't grow up. I don't even think like my family got my first computer, I think, was when I was in college.
Wow. I think ours was the first computer we got in probably like 2000, I think, or 99 or something. I don't fucking know.
AOL dial-up.
Yeah, definitely that. But,
And so then you just were pulled into it. And what did you find that it kind of helped you discover? What was the pull that...
I think I have a really strong background in performance.
Okay.
And predominantly, I was in a lot of theater growing up, doing musicals and plays, and I was in show choir, which, shout out to glee clubs all around the world, back before they were cool, and then uncool again. But I think for me, one of the things, especially again, there was so much of growing up in the Midwest that was such an influence on my spiritual journey. Being from there, it's a different energy than it is out here, and there's a lot of opportunities to kind of fall into the lulls that everyone falls into. And for me, I went in the complete opposite direction and went into tarot because it kind of reminded me a lot of the storytelling I was doing in theater. Wow. and in performing and learning about metaphysics and crystals and things like that. It was very, to me, the longer I'm in it, the more my life is allegorically, reflecting those things. So, I don't know, I think that's what it was for me. It was kind of my form of escapism, even though it was escaping into something more real, at least for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you dove into that and you found that comfort in there.
And understanding, too. Yeah.
And so then, what brought you into... more of seeing the power that can help in heal somebody or transform, and then also with the crystals as well?
Okay, well, a very popular book that we are all aware of is The Alchemist by Pablo Coelho. And, I first came across that book probably around 2011, I want to say, 2010, 2011. And at that time, I was in performing arts school. I went to a performing arts academy, and I was, again, very immersed in theater and dance and singing and music and all those things. And it went to a different level to where I was working professionally as a songwriter and as a singer, working with a label and all these things. And I graduated high school, and that started to shift. There was a lot. You know how it is in LA. It's 1 minute you're in, the next you're out. Like with whatever it is that you're doing, things tend to change really quickly here. And I ended up, after graduating, kind of had this period of, I guess, what could be considered as depression. I'm not like one of those melancholy people, that just by nature, I'm a double Sagittarius, so it's like we're not really depressive people. Not that there's anything inherently wrong if that's just your, your way of being, but, and I needed a job. I had no money. I was couch surfing, and I went to the Trading Post on Melrose. And there was this woman, and she had all these crystals and like this huge copper pyramid. And I remember just being like, whoa, like, again, always have been into crystals, always have had crystals. But this was like, it was like this energy of kind of like, it felt like this is the next step. That felt like the next step. And she was just a normal person doing her thing. And I was just, I guess, a person at the, the Trading Post. And we struck up a conversation. And she ended up hiring me as an assistant, So at that time of navigating this space of, navigating poverty consciousness, again, couch surfing. I know over 30 ways to make ramen noodles.
30 ways.
Oh yeah, I can trick them out.
Back when ramen noodles were 10 for $1.
Oh yeah, you can really make that stretch. But and I had to walk to the Trading Post on Melrose from Wilcox in Hollywood every Saturday, and I would walk in the summer, and she paid me in $2 bills, and I got my money up so I could buy more crystals, and then I was starting to work with crystals for self-confidence and motivation and prosperity, and I noticed that the more that I really sank into the metaphors of metaphysics, then the things would actually work that I was trying to do. So, that was the first phase. And then the second phase is, again, I was signed with a label, did all these things, and that fell apart. And it was when I really incorporated tarot and crystals together to help me heal a lot of that trauma that I was navigating in the way that the Fool in the tarot navigates his journey throughout the tarot. It kind of felt a lot like that,
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Well,
for those that don't know about the Fool.
For those that don't know, the major arcana is separated by 21 archetypal cards. And there's not enough time right now to go into all of
we're not doing like a tarot class, but I'm just saying, like, if somebody's lost and they're like, well, what's the Fool? I just want a little bit more.
So out of 78 cards, there are 21 major arcana cards, and the first card that jumpstarts the entire arcana or the story is the Fool. And the Fool is very much so about, like, diving empty-handed into this void, and embracing life for whatever it comes with, good and the bad, and allowing yourself to kind of suspend any disbelief or whatever it is that you may be facing at that time. And like I said earlier, my journey has also reflected The Alchemist in the sense that it's like I blindly went on this journey and I ended up working for a crystal merchant, much like he ends up working for a crystal merchant, so far away from my home, from the Midwest, by myself, just navigating this world. And when I really started to incorporate those archetypes, because a lot of tarot is predominantly based on the archetypal imagery and the symbolism that we all contain within ourselves. So once I married those two, I kind of started to create a structure for myself to work in.
In the story and finding that, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's always fascinating to me that how much the synchronicities in life are really like when people look at their journeys and they look back and they say, well, that led me here, that led me here, and that led me here. And whether you believe that we're our free will navigating or whether things are a divinely orchestrated plan, either mindset, whatever the case, or somewhere in between, everything adds up.
Yes.
Right? And it has these impacts that really are the driving force of whatever we do for the next 2, 3, 5, 10, or the rest of our lives, right? And these imprints can be so strong.
Yes.
And so here you were finding this job, working with this crystal woman, working through some of these things, and now you're here being the alchemist, creating your own products.
Yes, yeah, and I think one of the things that I've learned in my journey working with metaphysics, and it's been an interesting dance for me, especially coming from even though the arts are not considered secular, it was very much so lots of technique, lots of application, whereas in metaphysics, it's a lot of training, technique, and application. And I think, my life has definitely, me learning about alchemy, what that means for me, it means something different for everybody, is using what you have, with the things that in the circumstances that you're in to create what it is that you want. And you mentioned something about free will, or are we navigating as our free will, or is everything divinely orchestrated? And for me, divination through tarot, specifically, I do other forms, but predominantly tarot, it's very much so like, how can I put it? It's like we are creating off of our free will. We are the creators as a microcosm of the macrocosm. So it's like when you divine, you're kind of having a conversation with your higher self or God or whoever that says, XYZ would work best for you. So try this. Nothing's set in stone. That's something that I like to tell my clients. Nothing's set in stone, because we are in control of our lives.
Well, you make one little pivot or choice differently, and if you veer a little bit to the left or the right on a path that you're driving down, or like sailing's probably a better metaphor for that.
Yeah.
You turn the sail just a little bit, you're literally gonna end up in a freaking completely different continent.
and honestly, sometimes that's the best thing that can happen.
Yeah. But then it's like, is that all part of something?
Yeah.
Right?
Then it's like, what's what? And that plays a lot into my practice too, because it's like when things weren't working for me in my professional career as a musician, at the time it was like, this is the end of the world. You know what I mean, at the time. But now, years afterwards, I'm like, that's the best thing that could have possibly happened for me at that time, because something that I've learned through tarot is the characters in the tarot sometimes put themselves in situations just to be educated, even if that doesn't make sense.
Of course. I love that you're saying this, because a lot of people get stuck on these circumstances in their life. But, I always say that, you don't have any motion without friction.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, in order to grow or to develop or to see the world in a completely different way, or even to take actions in ways that are unreasonable or out of our comfort zone, we have to be forced, right? And so it's like, okay, I need to be in this situation, or I need to orchestrate this tragedy so that I can actually pull myself into this other direction, or deep dive into this spiritual journey, or to quit my job and do this, or whatever the case may be, right? Fill in the blank, people. But, it's like, so it's a breakthrough.
Yes.
But it feels like the world's tumbling down.
Yeah.
And so you had this, and so now you look back and you say it was the best thing that could have...
Oh, yeah. Now that it makes more sense. There's a card in the major arcana called the Tower. And sometimes the Tower has like a connotation of like, it's kind of like the ish hits the fan in the
Everything's
Tower
on fire.
Everything's on fire. The tower's falling. There's people jumping out. Like it can be pretty, ominous if you're not aware of the lesson. And a lot of the times with specifically the Tower card, it's a culmination of things that makes that eruption. It's a culmination of things that makes the lightning strike that one place to dismantle any ego that may have built up this structure that thinks that it's infallible.
Yeah.
Infallible to whatever failures or, mishaps that could happen. So it's really interesting. And, for me, that Tower in my life, it took me a little bit to decide to read professionally. I had still been using it as a tool for self, but it took me a little bit of time before I decided, like, okay, now I'm going to put this in the world,
Yeah.
So,
And what got you to do that?
Well, speaking candidly, it was my partner and my best friend. I mean, it was still at that end of, well, not the end. It was kind of more so, it was kind of like in the thick of it with, separating from my management and my production team and like all the people that I was working with. And I was just like going through my cards and my books and my crystals and like trying to figure out like, how can I change the circumstances of this? How can I change it? Like, I need more money. I don't want to work retail, like all these things. And I read from my friend, whom is a Taurus. She's more like a sister, but like she's my friend. And I read for her, and Tauruses, for those who don't know, are quite particular with how they spend money. And she was like, this is something that I would pay for, It's like, what do you mean? She's like, I think you should do this, like, as a job. You're in between jobs, like, and of course my partner, David, he was like, do it, being an Aries. So I got a Taurus and an Aries coming at me from both angles. And it actually led me to a place in LA, the Crystal Matrix in Atwater. Shout out. There's enough for everybody. And it was my first time ever going on an interview to read tarot. Like, I've been on many interviews for music or working with people, producers, or like retail, and I was terrified. And you know me, it takes a lot for me to actually be like nervous about anything.
But I mean, it's a completely different thing, right?
It was
especially if you
world.
were doing it like, professionally at that time, and it's like, okay, this person's gonna judge whether I'm super psychic and on point, and I'm, giving them their message, and then you like, I'm sure this has to happen where you have anxiety of, what if a whole bunch of negative shit comes up, and then you got to tell this person that you're reading for, well, your life is changing for a little bit of turmoil for a little bit, or this is happening.
And it happens. I think, that's one of the reasons why it's like, even though they're two different practices, I'm so incredibly grateful for the training I have in theater and performance, because when that comes up, and it is something that comes up in reading, sometimes you're not going to be pulling like the rainbow sprinkles cards, Well,
yeah, and people go in for readings that a lot of times of need and transition, looking for answers and clarity. Yes. And that means there's going to be a lot of turbulence going through that transition.
Or I like to tell my clients, I'm the type of reader that I'm going to give you homework. I'm not necessarily going to give you homework and you have to come back and report to me, but it's like, in my journey, I'm not the type of person that I don't really get readings from other people. I have a couple people that I get readings from that I really trust, and most of them are not reading tarot. One, they've been reading like 40 plus years. I like to go to people that I perceive to be at a much higher level than me. And those people have given me homework. And when I've done the homework, I get the results that I want to get, So when those negative cards do come up, it's more of an opportunity, especially because when I first started, really reading for myself, it was not good cards that was coming up. Like, I was like, great, all swords again. Cool.
Look at all the swords in my back.
Yeah, it's like, cool. Sounds great. But through that journey, I've been able to say, okay, well, this is what it really means. Because a lot of times I think we get so attached to our fear, which keeps us in those places.
Yeah, absolutely.
And instead of just seeing things like, okay, sometimes it's just not popping.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's okay.
And that's something where you can say, all right, then this is put my head in my shell, really reevaluate and move forward phase,
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. I'm one of those people all the way when things aren't... It used to be when I was younger, when things didn't come to me easily, it was very frustrating because I was like, why? Why? What is it that's not making this happen? But now it's like some of the best medicine that you can get to like take it easy, take it slow. I had a piano teacher in school that said to learn the fastest, go the slowest.
Yeah.
And I use that in everything.
Well, there's that metaphor, but then there's also like you were bringing up the cycles and the seasons, from the Midwest. It's like there's a natural flow for anybody that's listening that grew up in a place where you have the changes of season because, things literally slow down.
Oh, yeah. I get chills when you say it. Yeah.
And it's like, so there is this, in the summer, it's like everything's blossoming, you have lots of energy, the days are longer, you're out, you're doing festivals and, concerts and everything like that. And then the fall comes and it's like the school season or the different things, the nights start to go, it gets cold at night.
It gets cold and dark early.
You want to be home and in the covers, you want to do things that are more inner perspective type of things, but you're starting to kind of have that. And then by the winter, it is like you're cocooning a little bit.
Everything's done.
Everything's done, and there's it's emotional inner reflection. It's
it's hard for people too. Yeah. It's hard. Seasonal depression is a real thing for some people.
Yeah, but it forces you that. You know, I mean, the days are short. You're inside. It's snowing out. It's hard to go even hang out with anybody or do anything because
it's so cold.
And sometimes you literally get snowed in. Yeah. So you are stuck in hibernation. And when
nature forces you to slow down.
Yeah, when I grew up, we didn't have TVs or internet or anything. So you looked and you dealt with being you, and you were stuck in your little home.
Exactly.
And maybe you went outside and you played in the snow.
This is pre-social media, by the way, where it's like when it was nothing to do, you read books.
You read. You read or you played board games. Yeah. Board games were a big thing. And then, when the spring started, you started getting that energy and that. But there was a nice cycle of rebirth, expansion, and being in your full element, kind of dying or coming close to that shedding period, releasing, and then a hibernation period. And people forget, that's a cycle that exists for a reason.
Yes.
We're not supposed to be constantly like this.
No.
We need to reset. Yes. We go through those same cycles, and maybe we don't experience it when it's all sunny out every day or different things like that. Or we kind of, LA has two different things that work against people, I feel like. It's quite a competitive nature that everybody is like, go, go, go. What are you doing? What are you up to? What 50 things do you have on your plate, kind of thing. And it's always this trying to achieve more, do more, create more. And then there's also no slowdown. Yes. Because the sun's always out and it always feels like it's summer. So that artificial type of stimulus is in your brain. But we need to stop at times in order to get further ahead.
Mm-hmm. And I completely agree with that, especially because it's like, again, when I moved here in 2011, 2011, so it's been 8 years this year, it was really interesting. It was an interesting adjustment because I moved out here in October. And back in October, that's like the final countdown.
That's you do leaf fires and you have
hay rides and haunted houses.
You're drinking hot cider and
it's things are
fire pits in the backyard.
Exactly, and it was definitely a time where it was like, okay, cool, everyone was starting to kind of ease into the fall and the end of the year, and I get to LA and I'm like, I literally was in a schedule where I was I had 16 classes and I was in shows and I was working with producers, so it was that energy doesn't really exist here. So a lot of what I used tarot and crystals for was to self-care because there's such an adrenaline, especially when you come to a place like LA and you're trying to pursue something, whatever that something is. Everyone, usually that's a transplant here, is trying to chase or pursue something. So a lot of my practice with tarot and with crystals has been reprogramming a lot of those things that when I came out here for years, I was just go, 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 and then when I hit a brick wall.
You hit the brick wall because your adrenals, everything.
Oh, and if
you don't stop and rest, you'll be forced to stop.
Yeah, and that's because that's what nature does. There is always going to be cycles of time. So whatever those cycles look like for anybody that may be watching, it's really listen to it because there's a lot of things that I feel maybe I could have avoided had I just stepped out of my own way, you know, and just I have a saying. It's if I had taken many seats, I probably would have been able to not run into some of the roadblocks that I ran into. But using tarot and crystals to kind of learn, okay, what is grounding? What is that? How do I do that? I don't.
And so explain a little bit about how you use crystals for that.
Well,
and what kind of crystals do you use, and what are your go-tos?
yeah, I mean, we don't have all of our crystals here today, but
No,
you
but
know,
I mean, I'm just saying, just some of them. In
okay,
general.
well, I mean, let's use amethyst for example. One of the first crystals that most people come to, because amethyst being a quartz, quartz makes up 30% of the planetary makeup, and then the other half, well, it's silica, and then the other half is iron, So those are the two most abundant minerals that we have, and they have weight, and they have reverence throughout history as well. And a crystal like amethyst, when you look at it, it's purple, it's soothing. So for me, I would just take an amethyst when I was either in between rehearsals or in between a show or something like that, and I would sit with an amethyst and I would breathe and I would just concentrate on having the same weight in quality within myself to ground myself down, and you can do that, of course, with amethyst. Amethyst is kind of high vibrational, so it depends on, if you're a Pisces, it's probably going to shoot you right out of your body, but
I was like, this is the first time I've heard amethyst for grounding, but the metaphor of the weight of it, yes. I can understand.
Yeah, and especially because, there's still some speculation, but the purple in amethyst is iron. So it's the affinity is already there, Amethyst may not, like I said, work for most people. Most people are primarily aware of black tourmaline as a protective and grounding stone. But before I actually came here today, after a yoga session, I did this meditation with onyx. And I've always kind of had an affinity with onyx. And there's a lot of energy, and spirit has been giving me lots of messages for myself around what does mastery look like. I think a lot of us experience, especially in the metaphysical world, people that are dabblers, but I've always been somebody that if I'm going to do anything, I want to be a master of it. You know what I mean?
You want to deep dive into it. You want to learn
exactly. Yeah.
the ins, outs, and everything.
And I want to keep learning. And for me, that's not obviously. It's like mastery is like a lifelong journey.
I mean, nobody. I mean, the moment that somebody thinks they're a master, they're 10 steps behind. But
yes.
It's getting there because there's always more to learn. But that pursuit of mastery, you're going to learn way more than you could ever.
Exactly. And we touched on alchemy, and or you can see it as magic as well too. It depends on your frame of reference for either one. But they say there's a saying that a true magician only craves to have power over themselves. So for me, when I think of balance and I think of grounding, it's like getting yourself and saying take a couple seats, because sometimes we don't. We just keep going, and if there's no one around us that is willing to get in your face and be like, you need to calm down, you know what I mean, then you can just go. So for me, I find that that's been one of the best ones. Onyx, obsidian, smoky quartz is like the best. But
I like that phrase, a true magician only wants to have mastery over their self.
Yeah.
But I mean, it makes sense to dabble in that for a second. I just like that that's the first time I've heard that. So it's like do. But it makes, because I think when people really understand the laws of the universe and the essence of it, you don't want to be muddling in other people's energy and karma and everything like that. You want to stay true to you and your life and your vibration. It doesn't mean that if somebody's seeking help or support that you can't, but then there's a will that is met, right? And so, but yeah, it makes sense because people that actually know wouldn't want to mess around or control anybody.
There's a difference between belief and knowing. You know what I mean? And one of the old adages of the temples and the mystery schools of old is know thyself. You know what I mean? And that's always been something that was instilled from a young age in my life and through my studying. Is it's like all the metaphysical stuff we see, the crystals, the tarot, the this, the that, they're all tools to get us to pay attention to what's happening within ourselves. There's nothing outside. It's all within. And I mean, there are things outside, but metaphorically speaking, Yeah. And I think for me,
but you changed inside. You changed
exactly.
the web and all the energy on the outside.
That's the alchemy.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. You sit and meditate or ground yourself, and suddenly everything that was obstacles or problems in your life magically are like
They're opportunities. They become opportunities.
Or like they literally shift. It's like you get a phone call from somebody that you just had this wasn't moving forward or this.
Yeah.
And they call back and they're like, actually, we can make that happen for you. Yeah. And it's like,
what changed that? The
energy shifted.
Yeah, it's the energy. And it's something that I've noticed, especially through this journey. It's like, I believe we're all living the tarot. There's a reason why the system is so powerful, and it jumps through ages, and it continues to grow and to evolve. I mean, at one point there was one tarot deck, and now there's thousands, hundreds of thousands, in the span of maybe 500, 600 years. So it's
with the same minor and major arcane.
With the same archetypes. Yeah. Yeah, the archetypes stay the same. And for me, as a Sagittarius, my card is the Temperance card. And in some decks, the first deck that I read with was Aleister Crowley tarot of the Thoth tarot, which is like a very, very heavily esoteric deck, which looking back at it at 13, there's a reason why I kind of had to sit it down, because it was almost too much. It was overload. I don't think I was prepared at the time for it. But in traditional, tarot decks, it's called the Temperance, but in that deck it was called Art. And it was this image of this being mixing fire and water and creating all these, creating alchemy with all these different things. And that's been a lot of how I approach my metaphysics, is tempering my expectations with my results, tempering how much I give, because a lot of the times in this metaphysical community, a lot of us, and I think it's becoming a conversation now, we tend to just give, and try to be of service so much that we're like drained, because we've just given so much of ourselves or our magic or our energy to other people. And for me, that was learning how to temper that, how much to give and how much to conceal.
And then also being in that balance. I think that a lot of healers and people, they give, but they don't know how to receive.
Yes.
And so it's if you're constant output, no input. Yeah.
It's just not balanced.
No tank gets full,
Yeah, it's just not balanced. And I think that's one of the things, I'm not one of the, I don't consider myself to be like one of the like light and fluffy spiritualists. I keep it real. You know what I mean? I tend to be very
I appreciate that. Some people, it's just like, but, everybody is wherever they are in their journey. But when people are like, everything, namaste, everything's perfect.
It's like we just don't live in that world.
But it's like, no, not everything's perfect, and it's okay.
And it's okay.
And we're still evolving, and even saints and gurus and masters, and they all have their own, they're going through their own dharma too, they have their own journey. Yeah,
and I think that's something, that's one of the things that, I strategically planned with Expressive Earth, creating that was to kind of rewrite some of the narratives around what spirituality looks like, because you can be a spiritualist and a musician and someone who keeps it real, and you can do all of those things and have a form of expression, and we still all share the same earth. You know what I mean? We still all source from the same materials.
So is that why you came up with your kind of company name?
Yeah, because it was like, originally, it was specifically crystals, and it was Expressive Earth, and the tag was like, the Earth laughs in crystals, and I was like, nah. You know what I mean? So instead, Expressive Earth is, for me, it's, my name is Elijah Demetri, and Demetri comes from, the Greek goddess Demeter, which is attributed, of course, to Isis of the Egyptian pantheon as well, but those are both goddesses of the earth. And not until later in my life did I realize Elijah was an adaptation of the name for the Archangel Sandalphon, which was the guardian of the earth. So I was like, I have all of this, no wonder my mom named me, literally, my name means prophet, Elijah, but prophet, earth goddess is what the translation of my name was. So I was like, I guess I'll just use it. They both start with E's, and my name starts with an E.
I love that. I didn't even, learning this.
And that's what I meant, though, about correspondence, about archetypes. I have a mentor by the name of Malidoma Patrice O'May, and he's like a very renowned author, and he talks a lot about, the power of the name. And when we are named, whatever we come into this planet with, that's the energy that we're going to be working with, So that's something I tell people, especially in my readings, pay attention to the power of your name. I have them say their name 3 times before we start, just so they can tap into it. Because I think a lot of the times people just like, oh, my name's Thomas, or my name is, Zach or whatever. But it's like, what is the energy behind that? What's the story behind that too? So it's about working with what you have. So that's how I came up with the name, because I'm a theater kid. I'm expressive. My name has a bunch of earth influences, so it's like, great, expressive earth.
And so let's talk a little bit about getting you going into making your products here.
Yes.
And so what is this exactly?
So spirit water is kind of my take on, in a lot of traditional African spiritual systems, there is products used called Florida water, Agua de Florida, which is a alcohol-based substance that was originally created in the 1800s, and it was launched around the same time slavery was abolished. So a lot of African spiritualists, be they practitioners, of Ifa, Santeria, Candomblé, Palomayombe, Vodun, any of those systems, they use Agua de Florida. But for me, it's something that just came to me. I don't consider myself a practitioner of those systems, although there are influences in my spiritual practice. And I wanted to create something that I felt good using in my practice, just because even though the story and the legacy of that product works for people, it just didn't resonate with me. And as you can tell, I'm very much so, I like to create my own systems and base them off of systems that are tried and true. So I created my spirit water, and it's used practically in the same way. But of course, if you're working in a system where your spirit's like a certain thing, give them what they want. What I mean? Give them that. But and this was just something that came to me, and it was I have a lot of love for perfume and perfumery, and I have a theory that I was a perfumer in a past life, and it was something that came to me in a meditation. And
what I like about these is they're all natural.
Yes.
Versus a lot of, especially I've been, I'm obsessed with health and well-being. That's my down the rabbit hole at night sometimes. But a lot of the Florida water, for instance, as great as it is, and I feel the power of it, it's a whole bunch of different fragrances, which are chemicals, and everything isn't natural. And even though it has a good smell to it, and even though the different fragrances and things do have a spiritual property to it, it's, for all intents and purposes, toxic. Right? And so that's what I like about, you're using essential oils, you're using pure substances that could be eaten if you wanted to, but but you don't, but it's not like it's not toxic if it gets in your pores and your skin. And there's a tradition more in the South American shamans that use Florida water to actually put in their mouth and spit over you to clear your auric energy field. And I always think about and I've done that sometimes. But it's like all of these so this could be this better thing, and even though it's in your system and you're not swallowing it, but it doesn't matter if it gets absorbed. Yes. Right?
And then that's one of the things, you touched on again, this is something that you'll see more of in the future with Expressive Earth. My whole thing isn't necessarily, I just want to create products so people can buy them. It's like, my goal with Expressive Earth is to make it a product and make products and things that are beneficial to use in people's spiritual practices, but eventually the goal is to team up with organizations and foundations and charities that everything goes back to the earth, in some way, form, or another. Because for me, maybe it's just because I'm one of those people that, like I said, I like to know the ins and outs, but it's like, I'm not personally going to be pouring Florida water into my mouth. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just not going to happen for me. And that's okay. You got to work with what you have. But I was like, if this is something that I wanted to do, I wanted to make it something that I knew I could use in my practice that would be clean through and through. So the glass bottles are reusable. You can reuse everything, you know.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a part of it as well.
I love it.
And same with my candles, too.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about your candles. We don't have them here.
Yeah, we don't have them here today, but...
I know we're currently in Mercury retrograde. Maybe by the time people hear this, we're out of it, but we have it so often that we'll be in Mercury retrograde at some point again when other people are watching this. So, but you have the Mercury retrograde candle.
Yeah.
What's the thought process behind that?
Well, I was born on Mercury retrograde. Again, know yourself, get your chart. Your astrology will tell you everything that you are here working with, for the most part, aside from like the numerology and all the other, you know, esoteric, more so things. But I was born during Mercury retrograde, and I know that Mercury retrograde has a connotation of like, oh, here it comes, it's gonna mess up everything, my phone, my computer, like all this, you know. And for me, Mercury retrogrades have always been a time where I usually like whip my best work. You know what I mean?
Me too. You know, that's it. And that's an interesting thing. I was just saying to Ellie the other day, I was like, I like Mercury retrogrades. I was like, I get the stuff done that I've been putting off for God knows how long. And you know, the other day we're in the office, I was going through all the stuff, checking off all these things, mailing out things, taking care of like old like paperwork and everything that literally, you know, and she's like, you're like on the go-go. And I was like, it's Mercury retrograde. Every time this Mercury retrograde, place gets cleaned inside and out. It's like fall cleaning, you know, and I don't know.
For me, I don't know. For me, it's always been a very regenerative time. It kind of feels like, especially because, you know, Mercury is a planet of like communication and commerce and travel to a certain degree too, and technology. And for me, it's always been like, okay, how can I learn more about those aspects? Does that mean I have to reevaluate the way that I'm communicating? Does that mean that I have to tie up any loose ends, you know, that maybe I'm just letting kind of like float around? You know, there's just certain things like that. And this candle was brought up because, you know, I created this candle. I wanted to create candles, and I have more than my Mercury retrograde candle.
But I'm just saying that one,
you know, this is the last Mercury retrograde we're having of this decade. You know, so I wanted to have something kind of like where people could set strong intentions with, okay, these are the things that I want to reevaluate. These are the ways that I want to communicate. This is how I want to communicate. You know, what are the things that you want to push forward? How can you get Mercury energy in your life, especially because Mercury, as the actual element of Mercury, is very fluid and malleable. It's not something that's like fixed in this detrimental place. It's like things shift and change very quickly. So how can you kind of capitalize on that energy using the law of correspondence? That's why they're orange, you know, because the color esoterically of Mercury is orange. So, you know, there's been a lot of thought to go into them. And all of my candles, again, like the spirit waters, they're made with natural ingredients. The waxes are a coconut blend that is all natural, and coconuts are so sustainable. You know, they grow so quickly, and the wax and the meat and the water, there's so many things that we can get from them. And again, a lot of my practice is heavily influenced by traditional African or African American practices, and coconuts are like pervasive for prosperity and cleansing and all of the good things you can think of that come with the color frequency of white, purity, light, connection. That I wanted to put that in the candles as well, and it burns clean and they don't give me headaches because paraffin wax candles tend to give me headaches. So I wanted to create stuff that I would use. You know, that's always been a thing. I'm a big proponent of, if I would use it, then I would create it. If I would buy it myself, then it's something that I think that I could probably do myself.
So that brings me to, like, where can people buy stuff or find you and different things like that? Yeah,
well, you can find these babies here, the Spirit Waters. You can find these right now on my website, expressiveearth.com. You can find them on there, or you can find them here at Liberate. I have them only here exclusively right now in stores. And
that's at Emporium in Hollywood.
And Emporium and in Hollywood, yeah. So if you're not in Hollywood, go to the Emporium. same location, Los Feliz. And then my candles right now are going to be on my website at www.expressiveearth.com. Don't do too many W's. You guys
well,
get.
you know, I always find it. I always laugh at, and I had to say, like, do people always, you know, it's interesting because most of the time people have skipped doing the www. They just do blah blah blah.com.
You never know,
because you don't have to type it in anymore.
Yeah,
you don't have to type in the www.
Yeah, I guess so.
But once upon a time, you had to type in the www or you couldn't find the URL.
Yeah, so that's true. So yeah, so you can find me there, or you can find me on Instagram. That's where I do my most stuff at Expressive Earth. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. If you had to share one last thing with anybody, what would it be?
Oh wow. Ooh, this is a big one.
Sky's the limit. Answer the questions of the universe. Why are we here? No.
Yeah, why are we here? No, I would just say take your time, like with whatever it is that you're doing. You know, work smart. Working hard is important too, but working smart, because not everything you're gonna do is gonna work. Sometimes things just don't work out, and not everything you do, you're gonna do like the person next to you. What they can do. What you can do is what you can do. I would just say in your spiritual practice, if you're learning tarot, feel free to contact me for information on that, as I teach as well. But, you know, take your time. There's no rush. There's nothing saying that you have to learn this incredibly old system in like a day. Like, that's not going to happen. I mean, I've been reading tarot now for 13 years, and I'm still learning. I'm still studying. I'm still reading a lot. And reading is fundamental in the days of old, in the mystery schools. It wasn't something that you could just go take a course and be certified in. It's like intense reading. Like, it's almost like being a metaphysician is almost like being a law student, and the original law students were metaphysicians. So it's like you're going to be reading a lot of books. So I would leave you with pick up a book.
Read like in the old days, and if you don't want to read, Audible or audio.
Find a way.
Or, you know, if you're in LA, there's a cool thing like on it's like Hoopla. If you have a library card, I feel like I'm like doing shameless plugs here, but if you have your library card, you can get free download Audible books from the library, and I think you get 15 a month.
Oh wow!
So and they have so many different selections there. And if you really want to cheat the system, you can get the LA library card, then you can get the Santa Monica card, and then you can get the Pasadena one, and then you have like 30 or 45 downloads a month because each library card has a different number on it, and so you get different downloads.
Yeah.
But so I mean, you can get it free, so you can teach yourself for free.
Yeah, or come to places like Liberate that offer.
Oh yeah, we do classes here too.
They offer classes.
As I'm pimping out the library, but I mean, I feel like people need like reading again instead of like just overconsumption of mindless social media. It's like, where do we like learn, grow, expand?
Oh, that's something, you know, I know that we said we're going to wrap up, but this is what happens. This is what happens when you get a Libra and Sagittarius in the same room. We will talk. You know, it's there's nothing that can beat like a book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can take it with me wherever I go. Like if the power goes out, great. I still got a book. If my phone dies, great. You know, there's those things, and I would just say a lot. It's like just pay attention, listen to yourself, and allow yourself to kind of allow your higher self to inform your process. Because, like I said, not everyone's going to be a tarot reader. That's just what it is. Not everyone's meant to. That doesn't mean that not everyone can. You can do it for yourself, but there's no pressure into being something in metaphysics. And I think a lot of the times that happens, especially in LA. People are this, or they're that, and they're this, or they're that. You're a person before you're all of those things. You know,
and
what
we're
I mean?
all just on a journey.
And we're all on a journey.
I like what you were saying on your closing points. That's now longer closing points because we're still going.
Edit it now.
But no, you're good. You're good. We don't no edit. But the aspect of there is no rush.
No.
Like we're in whatever this is. There is no race. This is your life.
Yeah.
Like and. You know, people feel like they need to get wherever they're going. Where you're going is right now.
Yeah, what is this? Like, what does that mean?
And every expert was once a beginner.
Yes.
Everybody needs to take those steps, and there's nothing wrong with not knowing. When you stop worrying about what everybody thinks or needing to judge yourself and just be present, Because at the end of the day, when you actually realize, like, the most valuable aspect was those learnings. Like, when you were lighting up about when you first started learning from the crystals from the lady and working there, like, that was that not knowing novice energy created this beautiful memory in these times and these aspects of you.
Yeah.
And you had to be at that space and you had to be at that time in order to create that experience.
Yes,
right?
and it was like I was thrown into the lion's den in a way. It's like this person, they sold, of course, tumbled stuff, but they were selling like huge pieces to NASA scientists and stuff. So it was like I would come into work and have to like scrub the inside of this giant amethyst or citrine cave, and I would be like, I like crystals. And from that moment, you know, since then, that was 2012, I worked at 6 different crystal shops. So crystals kind of really like, they kind of took over my life for a split second. But it was the best thing, and I've learned so much, and it led me to you, and it led me here, and now here we are. So it's all great.
Well, thank you, Elijah. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always a pleasure. It's fun.
Until next time, bye guys.
See you.
If you enjoyed this conversation, like it, subscribe, and share it with your friends. If you want some more amazing resources on your path of liberation, head over to liberateyourself.com and sign up for our mailing list. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram at Liberate Hollywood, all one word, or Liberate Emporium, all one word. Until next time, liberate yourself.